The fluorescent lights of the St. Jude emergency room did not just illuminate the space, they vibrated with a low, clinical hum that seemed to drill directly into Mark's skull. To anyone else, it was just the background noise of a busy hospital, but to Mark, lying on a gurney that smelled of industrial bleach and old desperation, the world had shrunk to the size of his own agony. A jagged, white-hot blade of pain was twisting deep in his lower right abdomen, radiating upward until it stole the very breath from his lungs. He clutched the cold, metal guardrails of the bed, his knuckles turning a ghostly, bloodless white. His forehead was drenched in a cold, sickly sweat that made his skin itch against the thin, crinkly hospital paper. Every few seconds, the heavy double doors at the end of the hallway would hiss open, admitting a blast of cold night air and the distant, frantic wail of an approaching siren. Mark looked up, squinting through the haze of pain, searching for a hand to hold. He needed a tether to reality, a sign that he was not alone in this sterile nightmare. But his hand found nothing but empty air. 3 feet away, standing near the foot of his bed, was Chloe. She was not leaning in to whisper words of comfort. She was not stroking his damp forehead or telling him that everything would be okay. Instead, she was illuminated by the pale blue glow of her iPhone, her thumb dancing across the screen with a frantic, rhythmic tapping. She looked impeccable, far too impeccable for a woman whose husband might be facing a ruptured organ. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek, expensive ponytail, without a single strand out of place. She was already wearing her travel outfit, a designer tracksuit that Mark had bought her for her birthday just last month. The nurse said the surgeon is on his way. Mark, Chloe said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the melody he had fallen in love with years ago. She did not even look up from her screen. They are going to prep you. It is a standard appendectomy. My cousin had one last year, and she was back at the gym in 4 days. It is practically a nap with a scar at the end of it. Please, don't make it bigger than it is. Mark tried to swallow, but his throat felt like it was lined with dry sandpaper. Chloe, the doctor said, if it is perforated, it is dangerous. I am scared, Chloe. I have never been under general anesthesia before. Please, just come closer. I need you here. Chloe finally looked up, but there was no softness in her eyes. There was only the sharp, calculating impatience of someone who had been severely inconvenienced. She glanced at her rose gold watch, a luxury piece that represented 3 months of Mark's overtime pay. A watch he had bought her so she would never be late for the life she wanted. Mark, we have been over this for the last hour in the car, she sighed, a sound of pure exasperation that cut deeper than the physical pain in his side. The flight to Cabo leaves in exactly 3 hours and 45 minutes. The girls are already at the airport lounge. They are waiting for me. We have had this villa booked for 6 months. Do you have any idea how hard it was to get those reservations? It is all non-refundable, Mark. $3,000. Just gone. Because you had to get a stomachache tonight of all nights. A stomachache? Mark managed to gasp, a fresh wave of nausea rolling over him. They are literally drawing symbols on my skin for surgery, Chloe. I can't even sit up. I am not doing this to ruin your trip. Exactly. She snapped, stepping toward the bed, but not to comfort him. She reached down only to retrieve her designer carry-on bag that she had rested near his feet. You are in a hospital. This is the safest place on earth for you. What am I supposed to do? Sit in a plastic chair in a waiting room smelling like cafeteria food and floor wax for 10 hours? I am not a doctor, Mark. I can't hold the scalpel for them. Me staying here does not make the surgery go faster. It just makes me miserable and wastes a perfectly good vacation. Mark watched her as she began to check her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone, adjusting her lip gloss with a steady, practiced hand. The betrayal was not a sudden blow. It was a slow, agonizing realization that had been building for years, finally coming to a head in this cold, brightly lit room. He thought about the time she had a minor flu 3 years ago, how he had canceled a massive business trip to London, losing a promotion he had worked for years to get, just so he could stay home and make her homemade soup and rub her feet. He had done it without a second thought, because that is what you do for the person you love. But as he looked at Chloe now, he realized he was not a person to her. He was an accessory. He was the provider of the aesthetic life she posted about. And, right now, his medical emergency was off-brand. It was a glitch in her curated reality. "I could die on that table, Chloe," Mark whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and a newfound freezing clarity. "Complications happen. Don't you care if you ever see me again? Does our marriage mean that little to you?" "Oh, stop with the drama, Mark," she said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. The leather creaked, a sound of finality that echoed in the small room. "You are being dramatic because you are in pain. I will turn my phone on the second we land in Mexico. I will call the nurses' station. It will be fine. Honestly, if you loved me, you wouldn't want me to sit here in the dark crying when I could be recharging my soul. I need this, Mark. My mental health has been through a lot lately, and I deserve to have some fun." She stepped closer then, but she did not kiss his lips. She blew a casual kiss toward his cheek, making sure not to smudge her makeup or get too close to the germs of the hospital bed. "The Uber is downstairs. I told the driver to hurry. I will send you a picture of the sunset when I get to the resort. It will make you feel better. Love you. Bye." The heavy sliding glass doors hissed shut behind her. The sound of her designer sneakers, the ones he had worked through Christmas to buy her, faded into the distance of the hallway. Click, click, click. And then there was nothing but the hum of the machines. Mark lay there, the silence of the ER room rushing back in to fill the void she had left behind. A nurse entered a moment later, carrying a tray of surgical prep supplies. She looked at the empty chair beside Mark's bed, then at Mark's tear-streaked face. She had seen this look before, but it never got easier to witness. "Where did your wife go, honey?" the nurse asked gently, her voice full of a pity that felt like a hot iron against his skin. Mark looked at the ceiling, the bright lights blurring into a single, blinding white star. "She went on vacation," he said, his voice sounding like it belonged to a ghost. In that moment, as the sedative began to flow into his IV line, Mark felt a strange sensation. The physical pain was still there, pulsing and angry, but the emotional connection, the years of making excuses for her selfishness, the years of putting her needs above his own life, was being surgically removed. He felt the old Mark, the loyal, doting husband, begin to slip away. As the darkness of the anesthesia finally took him, his last conscious thought was not about surviving the surgery. It was about the fact that he was finally, truly, alone. And for the first time in his marriage, being alone felt safer than being with her. He closed his eyes, and as the world faded to black, he made a silent vow. The man who woke up from this surgery would not be the same man who was left behind. The waking world returned to Mark in fragments. First came the rhythmic hiss and click of a ventilator in the distance, then the sharp, metallic tang of blood in the back of his throat. Finally, a dull, pulsing ache in his side reminded him of the surgery. It felt like a heavy stone had been sewn into his hip, pulling at his skin with every shallow breath. He opened his eyes, expecting, hoping, against all logic, to see Chloe sitting in the vinyl chair by the window. He imagined her looking tired but relieved, perhaps holding a lukewarm cup of cafeteria coffee, ready to apologize for her moment of madness. The chair was empty. The sunlight streaming through the thin hospital blinds was harsh and unforgiving. It highlighted the layers of dust on the windowsill and the sterile white walls of the room. It was 10 in the morning. In Cabo, the sun would be hitting the turquoise water right about now. Chloe would likely be at the breakfast buffet, complaining that the mimosas weren't chilled enough or that the lighting wasn't right for her morning social media post. She would be surrounded by laughter and the smell of expensive sunscreen, while Mark was surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the sound of his own heart monitor. A nurse entered the room. Her name was Elena. She had a no-nonsense air about her, the kind of woman who had seen everything and judged none of it. She checked the monitors with practiced efficiency, her face unreadable and calm. She adjusted the IV bag and checked the drainage tube in Mark's side with a gentle but firm hand. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You're a lucky man. That appendix was minutes away from a total rupture. Another hour, and we would be talking about a very different outcome. The surgeon said it was one of the most inflamed he had seen this month. You're going to be sore for a while, but you're going to make it." Mark tried to nod, but his neck felt stiff. His muscles protested even the slightest movement, sending a ripple of sharp pain through his midsection. "My wife, did she call? Did anyone check in for an update while I was under?" Elena paused. Her hand froze on the IV bag for a split second. There was a microscopic flicker of hesitation in her eyes, a look of practiced professional neutrality. It was the look people give you when they have bad news they aren't allowed to say out loud. It was a look of pity that Mark had come to loathe in less than 24 hours. "We left 3 messages on the primary contact number you provided, Mr. Sterling. We haven't received a return call yet. However, your brother, David, has been calling every 20 minutes. He is stuck at the airport in Chicago due to the storm, but he is desperate to talk to you. He even offered to pay for a private car to get here if the flights don't clear. Do you want me to patch him through to your bedside phone?" The realization hit Mark harder than the post-surgical nausea. His brother, 3 states away and trapped in a literal blizzard, cared more about his survival than the woman who shared his bed, his home, and his bank account. "Not yet, Elena," Mark whispered. "Thank you. I just need a moment." Once she left, the silence of the room became an enemy. Mark reached for his phone on the bedside table, his arm feeling heavy and uncoordinated. His fingers felt like lead as he swiped the screen. He didn't check his missed calls. He already knew there were none from her. Instead, driven by a morbid, self-destructive curiosity, he opened her social media profile. He wanted to see what was more important than his life. It was a slow-motion clip of Chloe walking toward the ocean, her back to the camera. She was wearing a sheer, white designer wrap that fluttered in the sea breeze. The music over the video was an upbeat, tropical track, full of bass and energy. The caption read, "Sometimes the universe forces you to take a break so you can find your own light. No distractions, no drama, just me and the sea. Hashtag solitude, hashtag healing journey, hashtag self-love. No distractions." That was what he was to her. An emergency surgery, a life-threatening infection, the future they had discussed, all of it was just a distraction from her light. Mark scrolled down. The comments were a graveyard of irony. One friend wrote that she deserved this break. Another asked where the hubby was. Chloe's reply was a knife to the heart. She wrote, "Mark is doing his own thing. Men always find a way to make it about them, don't they? Taking this time to focus on my mental health for once." Mark felt a strange, cold sensation wash over him. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a profound sense of clarity. For years, he had been the silent engine of Chloe's life. He was the one who managed the taxes, handled the contractors, and worked 60-hour weeks so she could pursue her dreams without the stress of a real paycheck. He had built a pedestal for her, and she was using it to look down on him while he lay in a hospital gown that didn't even fit him. Every post she made was a brick in the wall he was building between them. He watched her stories, her clinking glasses with strangers at a beach bar, her laughing as she got a henna tattoo, her complaining that the resort spa was fully booked for the afternoon. She was living a life of utter indulgence while he was measuring his progress by whether or not he could take 3 steps to the bathroom without fainting. "Is everything okay, Mr. Sterling?" Elena asked, returning to find him staring intensely at his phone, his face pale and set like stone. "Actually, Elena," Mark said, his voice surprisingly steady and cold, "everything is finally starting to make sense. The fog is lifting." He put the phone down. He didn't block her. He didn't text her a furious paragraph. That would be giving her what she wanted: attention. Instead, he opened his laptop and logged into their joint bank portal. He saw the pending charges from the resort: $450 for a sunset dinner, $200 for poolside service, $100 for room service snacks. He looked at the balance. It was money he had saved for their 5-year anniversary trip, a trip he had planned to take her on to Italy next summer. He had researched the hotels, the flights, and the hidden gems of the Amalfi Coast, all to surprise her. He didn't drain the account. He was smarter than that. He simply moved the bulk of the savings, the money that came from his hard-earned year-end bonus, into a private account she couldn't see. He left exactly enough for her to finish her vacation and fly home. He wanted her to have a wonderful time. He wanted her to be completely relaxed, pampered, and unsuspecting, because the social wound she had inflicted on him in public had given him the ultimate gift: permission. Permission to stop caring. Permission to stop protecting her. Permission to be the villain she was already pretending he was. As the sun began to set over the hospital parking lot, Mark didn't feel like a victim anymore. He felt like a strategist. He spent the rest of the evening not looking at Chloe's photos, but researching the best divorce attorneys in the city. He looked for the ones who specialized in asset protection and high-conflict separations. He looked for the ones who wouldn't hold back. He realized that Chloe loved the idea of him, the guy who paid the bills and fixed the problems. She didn't love him, and if she didn't want the man, she didn't get the lifestyle. "Sleep well, Chloe," he whispered to the glowing screen of his phone as he saw her post a final photo of a moonlit beach. "Enjoy the luxury. It is the last time I will ever pay for it. The bill is coming due." The discharge from the hospital felt less like a medical release and more like a soldier returning from a war he had already lost. Mark sat in the back of an Uber, his hand instinctively hovering over the fresh bandages on his side as the car hit a pothole. Every jolt was a sharp reminder of his physical fragility, but his mind was harder than it had ever been. He watched the familiar suburban streets roll by, but they didn't feel like home anymore. They felt like a movie set for a life that had been canceled. When the car pulled into the driveway, the house stood silent and imposing. Mark noticed the small things first. A package on the porch that had been sitting in the rain for days. The lawn was starting to look ragged at the edges. He climbed the stairs slowly, his breath hitching with the effort, his body protesting every movement. Inside, the air was stale and heavy. Chloe had left in such a frantic rush to chase her sunset that the house was a monument to her clutter. Her discarded shoes were scattered in the hallway. A half-empty wineglass sat on the kitchen counter, a purple ring dried deep into the marble. It was a visual representation of her soul, messy, entitled, and entirely indifferent to the person who had to clean up after her. Mark stood in the kitchen and listened to the silence. It wasn't a peaceful silence, it was the sound of an ending. Mark sat at his mahogany desk in the home office. This was the room where he had spent thousands of hours earning the money that fueled Chloe's lifestyle. He opened his laptop. The blue light reflected in his eyes, which were now devoid of the warmth they usually held for his wife. He didn't feel the urge to call her. He didn't feel the urge to check if she had landed safely. He felt nothing but a cold, surgical precision. He began with the logistics. He called a local high-end moving company. "I need a full service pack and move," he told the coordinator. "Everything goes into climate-controlled storage. I want the house staged for a quick sale by Monday morning. I don't care about the cost. I care about the speed." Next, he called his real estate agent. "The house is in my name, purchased before the marriage with my inheritance," Mark said, his voice steady and low. "List it. I want a cash buyer. I don't care if we take a 10% hit on the price. I want the closing papers ready before the month is over. Do not put a for sale sign in the yard. Just get it done." For the next 3 days, Mark lived like a ghost in his own home. He watched the movers arrive in unmarked trucks. He watched them wrap the sofa where they had watched movies. He watched them box up the dining table where he had cooked her $1,000 birthday dinners. Each item removed was a weight lifted off his chest. He didn't keep a single photo. He didn't keep a single memento. He spent the evenings in a single folding chair, the only piece of furniture he hadn't sent away yet. He would sit in the dark, the silence of the empty rooms echoing his own internal stillness. His phone would buzz occasionally, a notification from Chloe's social media. She was at a yacht party now. She posted a video of herself clinking glasses with a group of strangers, her laughter loud and forced. The caption read, "Finally found my tribe. No looking back. Life is too short for people who bring you down." Mark didn't feel the sting anymore. He felt a dark sense of satisfaction. She was right. There was no looking back. He spent Friday morning with his lawyer, Jennifer. She was a specialist in high-asset divorces, known for her scorched earth policy when it came to spousal abandonment. She looked at the medical records from the ER, and then at the time-stamped Instagram posts of Chloe at the beach. "She left you in the emergency room during a life-threatening crisis to go on a luxury vacation," Jennifer said, her pen scratching across a legal pad. "In this state, that is a textbook case of marital misconduct and emotional abandonment. We are filing for an immediate separation of all joint assets." Based on her social media posts, she is publicly declaring her independence. We will give her exactly that. She wanted a life without distractions. She's about to get it. Mark signed the papers with a steady hand. He felt a strange sense of peace. He wasn't doing this out of petty anger. He was doing it out of self-preservation. He was tired of being the only one building a life that the other person was happy to burn down for a weekend of fun. By Saturday evening, the house was a hollow shell. Every rug, every painting, every comfortable chair was gone. Mark walked through the empty bedrooms. The indentations in the carpet where the bed used to be looked like graves. He walked to the kitchen and left a single white envelope on the bare granite island. Inside were the divorce papers, the listing agreement for the house, and a printout of her own Instagram post, the one where she called him toxic energy. He didn't leave a long, emotional letter. He didn't owe her any more words. He simply wrote 5 words on the back of the photo. "Enjoy the space. It's yours." Mark walked out the front door and locked it behind him. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't look back at the life he had built for a woman who didn't exist. He got into his car and drove toward a hotel near the airport. Chloe was scheduled to land in 24 hours. She was expecting a husband waiting at the gate, a clean house, and a life of continued luxury. Instead, she was coming home to an echo. She was coming home to the solitude she had claimed to love so much. Mark realized that the most powerful revenge wasn't a shouting match or a public scandal. It was simply becoming invisible to someone who thought you were a permanent fixture in their world. As he checked into his hotel room, Mark felt the first real smile touch his lips in years. The surgery had saved his life, but the vacation had saved his soul. He turned off his phone, laid down on the fresh hotel sheets, and for the first time in a decade, he slept through the entire night. Chloe's flight landed at 6 p.m. on Sunday. She stepped off the plane with a golden tan and a suitcase full of duty-free luxury bags. She checked her phone immediately, expecting a long list of desperate texts from Mark. Instead, there was nothing. No "I missed you," no "how was the flight," and most importantly, no "I am waiting at Terminal 4. She rolled her eyes, complaining to her friends about Mark's childish attitude. She called an Uber, grumbling about the $40 fare. When the car pulled into the driveway, she noticed the house was dark. She struggled with her heavy bags, annoyed that Mark hadn't even left the porch light on. She jammed her key into the lock and pushed the door open. "Mark, I'm home. Come help me with these bags," she shouted into the hallway. Her voice did not hit a wall of warm air or the smell of a home-cooked dinner. It echoed. The sound bounced off the bare hardwood floors and returned to her, hollow and cold. She fumbled for the light switch. When the overhead LEDs flickered on, Chloe's heart skipped a beat. The living room was a void. The plush sectional sofa was gone. The 80-inch television was gone. Even the curtains had been stripped from the rods, leaving the windows like black, staring eyes. She ran to the kitchen, her heels clicking like a frantic heartbeat on the tile. The marble island was bare, except for a single white envelope. She ripped it open, her tanned fingers trembling. Inside was a screenshot of her own Instagram post with the words "toxic energy" circled in red. On the back, in Mark's steady handwriting, it said, "You wanted space. Now you have it." Chloe sprinted upstairs to the master bedroom, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The room was a skeletal remains of a life. Her side of the closet was a mountain of clothes dumped on the floor. Mark had only taken the hangers, the shoe racks, and the high-end organizers he had paid for. She grabbed her phone and dialed Mark's number. It went straight to a pre-recorded message. "This number is no longer in service. Please contact Miller and Associates for all legal inquiries." She screamed into the empty room, the sound of her own voice mocking her. She tried to log into her banking app to book a hotel, but the screen flashed insufficient funds. Mark had left exactly $1,200, the cost of her flight and a week of groceries, and not a penny more. The joint credit card was declined at the first attempt. She sat on the floor of the empty bedroom, surrounded by her designer bags and vacation souvenirs. She realized then that the aesthetic life she curated was built on a foundation of Mark's labor, Mark's patience, and Mark's love. Without him, she was just a woman in an expensive tracksuit, sitting in a house she could no longer afford to heat. 2 hours later, a knock came at the door. It wasn't Mark coming back to apologize. It was a process server. "Chloe Sterling? You've been served." She looked at the papers, an emergency petition for the sale of the property, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting Mark or his family. The reset she had bragged about to her followers was finally real. She was alone, she was broke, and she had no one to blame but the reflection in her phone. 6 months later, Mark sat on the balcony of a modest but modern apartment overlooking the city. His recovery had been physical and spiritual. He had lost the weight of a failing marriage and gained a sense of peace he hadn't known in a decade. The house had sold in less than 2 weeks, to a cash buyer. After the legal fees were settled, he had moved his share into a retirement fund Chloe couldn't touch. He heard through mutual friends that Chloe was living in her mother's spare bedroom, working a retail job she hated, still trying to post luxury content from the mall dressing rooms. Nobody was hitting the like button anymore. Mark's phone buzzed. It was a text from his brother David, heading to the city this weekend. "Dinner is on me. I found a great steakhouse that doesn't allow phones at the table." Mark smiled and put his phone face down. He didn't need to check notifications. He didn't need to perform for an audience of strangers. He watched the real sunset, the one he didn't have to capture on camera to enjoy. He had survived the surgery, he had survived the betrayal, and he had learned the most valuable lesson of all. A partner who isn't there for the ER does not deserve to be there for the vacation. Mark stood up, walked inside, and closed the door on the past. The silence was finally, truly quiet.